here we are. He has been home for 7 months, and it has been a roller coaster for those 7 months. He had his surgery in February. We had like a snowstorm, and we were all kept inside, which reminded me of my single mom days, because he was not able to do anything because he had just had his surgery. So he was a little limited to what he could do. So my son and I spent the majority of the time doing stuff outside, playing in the snow, and it brought up some emotions that I had buried. But we survived the snowstorm. We survived those emotions that were brought back up. You know, I call them triggers. There are certain things that trigger events of the past. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. But if you've ever loved an addict, then you understand what it means by triggers. It can be a word, it can be the way they act, it can be a gesture, a smell, your phone ringing, or better yet, you calling someone and it going straight to their voicemail. There's so many things that can trigger the loved one of an addict. But we survived it. We're entering into a new month, March, which is our son's birthday. And I was so excited for the first time to actually spend our son's birthday together as a family. At this point, our son was about to turn 13, so he really didn't want a family birthday. He wanted to be with his friends, but just the fact that my husband and I could sit back together and watch him was such a surreal moment for me, because I honestly didn't think that I would ever get to experience that moment. We roll on into April. My husband has signed up for a retreat. And if you understand what that means, it was huge. And I had been praying and praying and praying that God would just move miraculously in his life, to take off those burdens, to break all those chains. You know, he was a free man, but yet he wasn't. He was still held captive by his shame and his guilt. And I want nothing more than to see him truly free. So he goes on his retreat, and the emotions that I felt should have been very happy, but the enemy was working on my mind overtime. It was just, my wheels were spinning. I went to my bed for the first time alone in 7-8 months, and it was not a good feeling. And I started to think, what if God doesn't want us together? What if God starts to tell him that we're not supposed to be together? What's going to happen? And then, you know, because he doesn't have a phone, there wasn't any way to communicate, but my heart was breaking. And I could not wait to see him. I mean, I wasn't even away from him for 2 days, maybe 1 day, 24 hours. And it was a little longer than 24 hours, maybe 48 hours. And I remember when I saw him on that stage singing and praising God, my heart was still breaking, because I didn't know what he was going to tell me when he came down off of that stage. But he came down and he just embraced me. And we really didn't talk about anything significant, what God was doing in his life, but I felt those arms around me, and I had a complete peace. Because of COVID and everything, he ended up coming home that night, and it was really late, probably about 2 o'clock in the morning. I was asleep, but I heard my bedroom door open, and he came over to me, and he touched me, and he just said, "I'm sorry." And for the first time, and I stopped him, for the first time over, I don't know where we were how many years at this point in life, maybe 15 years, I heard those words, "I'm sorry." And they were so sincere, and he didn't have to say anything else. But he experienced change that weekend, and I saw it, and I felt it. But let me tell you something, when God starts moving, so does the enemy. And he did say those words, "I'm sorry." And that's when the enemy kicked it into gear. But at that moment, we went to church the next morning, and for 24 hours, I had no words to describe what I saw, what I felt, and I could only thank God. And let me tell you, there's more to that story.